All right, so this is a strategic business leader. This is strategic business leader SPL exam. And I'm going to teach you this subject. My name is Rashid Hussain, and I've been teaching this subject for many years. In fact, it used to be, two separate papers, P1, which was the risk awareness and ethics, and then it was the business analysis. So then ACC emerged these two exams, and now we have the SPL paper. So basically, it's actually a merger of two papers, which is risk awareness and ethics, and then we have the business analysis. So first of all, there are a few things which you need to understand regarding this paper. And the first thing first is it is actually a 4-hour duration exam. That means you have 240 minutes. And other papers which you have done so far was different. It was 3 hours and 15 minutes. In fact, 3 hours, and then we were having the reading time. So it is 100 marks and then 80 for the application of the technical content and 20 for the professional skills. Now, when we say 20 for the professional skills, that doesn't mean that these 20 are the separate marks in the exam. These 20 professional marks are integrated with these 80 marks. So when you are attempting this 80 marks paper, so for the flow, for to create a flow, to talk about in a particular manner, to follow a particular method, gives you these 20 marks, which we'll be discussing in a while. So don't think that these 20 marks are the separate marks, or they are integrated with these 80 marks. And again, 50% is the passing percentage. The case study you will be having in the exam is around 12 to 15 pages. So that means you need to develop the practice of reading. Because if you're reading in the exam for the first time, you won't be able to extract the information from the paper. So that is something very, very important, that you need to practice reading, how to read 12 to 15 pages in one go, and how to remember that information which you have studied in that case. All questions are based on the same scenario. That means there is an integrated scenario. The requirements are different, but the scenario is integrated. That means it comes with the flow. The emphasis is on the combination of the technical and professional skills. Now, why the ACCA felt that there is a need of the strategic business leader paper? The topics are the same. So if you see the contents, what they have done, they have merged to exam the risk awareness and ethics and business analysis. The same topics are there in this exam. So why there was a need, to develop altogether a new paper? So the reason for that is that the current market demands accountants to be strategic rather than conventional. The conventional role of accountant was to, deal with the spreadsheets, dealing with the numbers, making the financials, plus minus thing, profit loss thing, asset calculation thing, things like that. But this work can be done even by a graduate who has done the graduate in accounting. So why you have done the professional qualification like ACCA, you're a chartered accountant. So what is the difference between a normal graduate in accounting and you? The difference is that you need to understand that you are an accountant who is going to work at the strategic level. When we say strategic level, that means at the board level, senior management, you will be there. They need your services. They need your services not only in terms of the accounting, but also in terms of the strategy, that you tell them what strategy is best for the company in a given scenario, in a given condition, where they are right now, what they should do so that they can achieve their objective. And so many things. For example, if they're having internal controls, like in this exam, the recent one was very much relevant to the internal controls. The examiner gave the internal control things. Now you have studied that internal controls in the audit paper, but in that paper, it was from the perspective of the auditor, that you are auditing the financial statements. And before you go for the substantive testing, you just evaluate the client internal control system to see whether it is strong or weak, because it is going to affect your testing. But when we say that internal controls in the SBL exam, so that means controls are always implemented against the risks. Like for example, in the previous years, we were having the COVID. So there were COVID protocols every year, every organization, every company was following the COVID protocols. So why those controls were followed? Because there was a risk of that virus being spread. So remember one thing, if there's no risk, then there are no controls. There's no need of controls because there's no risk. For example, if you have a car and there's no one who can steal your car, you are not going to lock it, never ever. But for example, if there's a risk that someone can steal your car, someone can steal your belongings within the car, you're always going to lock it. And even once you have locked, you will always check it. Because like if you didn't lock your car, there's a possibility that someone can steal your car, someone can steal your belongings. So when the company is operating in the market, there are a lot of risks they're facing, and risks are different. Some risks which we are going to take, without that the business is not possible. That is known as the business risk, strategic risk. For example, if I want my product to be successful in the market, I need to launch my product in the market. Without launching, how can my product be hit in the market? It's not possible. The first step is to launch your product in the market. So that means this is the risk that you need to take. If you want to enter in a particular market where no one is selling that product, now there's a possibility that if your product clicks, you will enjoy the monopoly over there. But if your product fails, then that means you need to wind up and you will incur the losses. But this is the risk you need to take, because without entering into the market, you cannot succeed. If you want your company to grow, there are two possibilities. Either you can expand your operation or you can buy another company. So either there is organic growth or then there's acquisitions and mergers. So if you want to grow, if your company wants to grow, then there are certain risks that your company needs to take. Those are known as the business risks. But then there are risks that your company needs to avoid, and your company needs to bring the controls against those risks. For example, the risk of theft. No one wants the theft within the company. So the risk of the losses due to weak internal controls, for example, inventory is being stolen, inventory caught the fire, or for example, fraudulent financial reporting, misuse of the company's assets, operational risks, compliance risks. Now, these are the risks that the company needs to avoid. They will be building the controls against that, because this is not the risk that the company wants to take. So that means this brings us to the debate that there are two types of risks which we'll be dealing in the risk section. So now what this risk has to do with you. You are a strategic accountant working at the strategic level, the senior management level, and your organization may ask you, may give you a role to identify the risks which the company is facing right now or which the company may face. And they want you to analyze the company's position against those risks, whether the company is capable of taking those risks. And for example, your competitor is a risk, or government is a risk, or environment is a risk, things like that. Similarly, there is a portion relevant to the ethics. Now, what you have to do with the ethics, you're operating in a world where every action of the company is being monitored. So if there is any sort of immoral, unethical acts, for example, discrimination like gender discrimination, racial discrimination, religious discriminations, societal discriminations, and the company is involved in unethical practices, giving the bribes, involved in corruptions, and they are polluting the environment, they are benefiting at the cost of the society, at the cost of the environment, they have the negative footprint, then if this thing is being discovered, the people will immediately stop buying the products of the company and the company will fail. So that means the ethics portion is important. So I'm going to discuss one by one. So first of all, I've discussed the risk and the controls portion with you. And then I've discussed the ethics portion. So the first portion is apply excellent leadership and ethical skills. And this time, for the first time, examiner basically tested the leadership in a good number. In previous exam, there was no leadership thing as such. But this time, in the recent exam, it was the scenario from the leadership styles the leader should adopt, and it was relevant to the case. And then ethical skills, the tone from the top, that means the board should adopt, because if the board adopts unethical practices, immoral practices which are being discovered later, then the company may face very bad circumstances, repercussions. And then similarly, we have the governance and agency system. We know when it is the company, it is being run by its agents, the directors, the shareholders are sitting outside the organization. And they have invested within the company. They have trusted the directors. The directors are running the company on their behalf. And we know there's an agency problem that the directors may act in their own interest. So that is why there's an existence of the corporate governance. The types of board structure, unitary board, two-tier boards. And then we have the responsibility of the board, which responsibility the board does take itself, and which responsibilities are delegated to the individual directors and committees. And then the existence of non-executive directors, then the existence of the board committees, audit committees, risk committees, remuneration committees. So again, because the company is usually, we are talking about the big companies who are listed, they are supposed to comply with the corporate governance best practices. Then you should be someone who is aware of the corporate governance practices. And you should be aware whether the company is following that or not. And you should be able to help the company in complying with those things. So this is all about, the corporate governance. And then we have evaluate the strategic position of the organization against the external environment. External environment means the environment which is not in the control of the company. For example, political factors are not in the control of the company. Economic factors, social factors, technological factors. So external environment. Similarly, the threats, the opportunities, and then the changes in the market, the competition, again, that is something external. The macro environment and other things. And then we discuss the risk profile of the organization, the risk management. There are certain risks which the company needs to take. There are certain risks that the company needs to avoid. They need to build the control against that. And then we have the information technology. The company without technology nowadays cannot survive even a single day. So you see many examples. Where's Nokia nowadays? Can we see that? A big company. Few years back, it was the company. Whose phones were used by the 70% of the population. So where's that company nowadays? We don't see that. They didn't adopt the technology. Now they're out of the market. Where is Kodak having the cameras? With the existence of digital cameras, where are they now? Can we see that company? No. So if the company is not following the information technology, the IT thing, the data analytics, the big data, artificial intelligence, robotics, and things like that, blockchain technologies, then they cannot exist in the market. So being an accountant, you should not be someone who know the manual work. You should be someone who can, switch the company towards automations. You tell them that you're doing the things manually, and this will not benefit you anymore. You need to switch to automations. So you should be someone, a strategic accountant who's aware of how the companies can automate the operations, how they can automate their productions, how can they automate their finances. And then we have the internal control systems, which was tested in the recent attempt as well. And then apply high-level financial techniques from the applied skills exam. Now, this is something which you have done in your F9 exam. For example, investment appraisal. So exam question may include some NPV calculations. Or for example, something related to budgeting, or for example, something related to decision making, return on capital employed. So financial techniques. So you should be aware of these things. And then we have enable success through innovative thinking, applying best in-class strategies and disruptive technologies in the management of change. That is change management. Again, automations. The change is not easy. Many people will be avoiding that change. Many people will be resisting that change. Some people will have the fear of losing their job when there is an automation. So how the company can bring the change management. And then we have the professional skills. Now, what are these professional skills? I'm not going to explain it over here because I have a lecture, introductory lecture, where I have explained this professional skills, the communication, the skepticism, the commercial acumen, evaluation, analysis. Now, I have told you that these are not the separate marks in the exam. These are relevant to those 80 marks which you will be writing. For example, communication, express yourself clearly and convincingly through the appropriate medium. For example, if asked to explain to the head of human resources that they have a conflict of interest if they're planning to interview a close friend for a position at a company, particular care would need to be taken to demonstrate a clear and unambiguous communication issue. Whilst also being tactful, the head of human resources will be sensitive to any implied accusations of acting unethical. So these are the things, communication, commercial acumen, which I've explained in my introductory lectures. Now, these are the chapters which you are supposed to do. Introduction to the SPL, concepts of the strategy. And again, this is according to the Kaplan textbook. Study resources. So you need to use if you're taking my lectures, then you will be using my slides, just like we're using right now. And then we have the Kaplan kit we'll be using for the practice and the past papers as well. So professional classes do not involve the book reading. We are never going to read the book in the class. I'll be explaining you the topics using the slides, giving you the practical examples. And then after each topic, we'll be doing the practice from the exam kit. And once we are done with all the topics, then we'll be doing the past paper because the case studies are integrated. So we cannot attempt the portion of the past paper. We should attempt the full past paper in one go. So are you ready?